Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up, not just in this room, but in your own life. You could be anywhere else doing 100 different things, but you chose this moment. You chose to pause. You chose to listen. So let me ask you, have you ever felt the weight of a world that seems too busy to care, too hurried to pause for a single heartbeat of compassion? Have you ever wondered if you, one individual in a crowd of millions, can really make a difference in reflecting God's love and compassion to the people around you? I know I have. I've stood in spaces where everyone seemed too consumed by their own battles to notice a neighbor's suffering. I've asked myself, where is that caring spark we all yearn to see? And that question led me here today. Because maybe you've asked it too. Maybe you've questioned if compassion even has a place in a world spinning so fast it blurs our view of what truly matters. But I'm here to tell you it absolutely does. It always has, and it's our responsibility to keep that flame of empathy burning. We crave belonging. We want to feel that someone sees us, hears us, cares about us. This is not a sign of weakness. It's a universal cry of the human heart. No matter how strong we appear on the outside, deep down, we all want to know that our struggles aren't invisible. We all want to know that love, God's love, can still be found in the chaos. That it's not some distant concept locked away in ancient texts or lofty sermons. We want to touch it, to see it, to be it. That's why today's topic matters. We're talking about reflecting God's compassion in practical ways, about making sure His love isn't just an abstract idea, but a living force that changes lives. This isn't about hollow words or shallow gestures. It's about real transformative action. The kind of action that can shift someone's day from despair to hope. The kind of action that can make a young person decide they do have something to offer this world. The kind of action that can mend a rift in a family that's gone too long without speaking. The kind of action that can bring humanity back into our workplaces, neighborhoods, and communities. So why does this matter so deeply? Because each one of us has the power to either push someone further into their loneliness or pull them back toward connection. Every conversation we have, every seemingly insignificant interaction, holds the potential to spark compassion or feed apathy. Think about it. How many times have you needed a kind word, a gentle smile, a nod that says, "I see you, I'm with you"? How many times have you walked away from a situation wishing someone had shown you a bit more understanding? Now flip that perspective. How many times has someone else looked at you, silently pleading for that same empathy? My friends, it happens every day. In our schools, our office hallways, our streets, and our homes. Everywhere we turn, people are quietly longing for that one moment of genuine compassion. That's why I want us to dig deep into how we can reflect God's compassion to others. In 8 resourceful, tangible ways. Not theoretical steps, not empty lines, but living principles that shape our actions. You might be thinking, can a list of ways really make a difference? Yes, when they become a lifestyle. A single act of kindness can stand against 1,000 acts of indifference, but 8 purposeful ways of living out compassion consistently, passionately, can transform entire communities. And we need transformation. We need it in our homes. We need it in our relationships with friends and coworkers. We need it in the hearts of the young, the old, the wealthy, and the struggling. Because compassion is the great unifier. It doesn't care about your status, your background, or your failures. It's here to bridge gaps and remind us that we're all in this human experience together. But we must decide to take it seriously. We must decide that reflecting God's compassion isn't just an occasional exercise, but a calling, a duty. If we neglect it, we'll keep seeing the distance between us grow. We'll keep stumbling over misunderstanding and conflict. And in the process, we'll lose sight of the truth that we are each other's keepers. It's easier to shut down, to close our hearts, to say we're too busy. But easy paths rarely lead to greatness. They rarely lead to healing. We're here to tackle that discomfort, to challenge ourselves, and to commit to a higher way of living. So let's turn our attention to how we can do this. Let's look at real examples of young people searching for purpose, of families struggling to stay intact, of communities and workplaces trying to maintain human connection in an increasingly transactional world. Let's examine the consequences if we don't wake up to our responsibility. Let's talk about the signs we might be missing and the practical solutions that can ignite a revolution of love. And yes, let's do it with passion, conviction, and humility. I'm not asking you to memorize a list and then go on with your life unchanged. I'm inviting you to open your heart, to be brave enough to look someone in the eye and say, I see God in you. Because that, my friends, is where transformation begins. Now, are you ready to discover 8 resourceful ways to reflect God's compassion to those around you? Are you ready to become the catalysts of kindness this world so desperately needs? Take a deep breath. Let go of any distractions and allow yourself to be present, because right now, in this moment, we're about to embark on a journey that could stir something powerful in you. We're about to cross a threshold from casual observers to active participants in God's plan to spread His compassion. It might be challenging, it might stretch you, but I promise it will be worth every ounce of courage you pour into it. So let's get started. And let's make every word, every action, and every heartbeat count. I want you to imagine standing at a crossroads. On one side, the path is lined with apathy, distractions, and missed opportunities to show empathy. On the other side, it's illuminated with grace, patience, and selfless service. The choice is yours. And that choice begins now. Let's talk about the 8 ways we can choose that brighter path every single day. Let's talk about what happens when we wholeheartedly reflect God's compassion and how it can lift not only others, but our own souls as well. When we finish, I hope you'll walk out of here with a new determination and an unshakable faith in the power of compassion. Because there is nothing more urgent, nothing more necessary, and nothing more powerful than love in action. Before we explore these 8 ways, pause with me for just a heartbeat. Ask yourself, am I willing to let God's love shine through my words, my deeds, my very presence? Am I ready to offer up my own comforts to bring comfort to others? And am I willing to do this not just once, but daily, in every space I enter? If your heart is pounding with a yes, even if it's faint, then let's move forward together. Let's embrace this calling with the boldness it deserves and the humility it demands. When we talk about reflecting God's compassion, we're talking about being vessels for His presence in a world that sometimes forgets to slow down and care. So let's walk through 8 resourceful ways to make His love visible, tangible, and undeniably real. Let's make compassion more than a nice idea. Let's make it a living testimony of our faith, our humanity, and our shared responsibility to one another. The first way, we actively listen. Not with half an ear while scrolling through our phones, but with the fullness of our attention. We lean in. We ask questions. We reflect back what we've heard. When a teenager in your church group says they feel unseen, you pause. Look them in the eye and say, I hear you, and I value your voice. You put the phone away and let them know their concerns matter. If we don't learn to listen deeply, we create a generation that feels unheard and unimportant. So we slow down, we put away distractions, we offer our time. The solution is simple, but often neglected. Invest in real dialogue. Share a cup of coffee, a quiet walk, a listening ear. And we do it consistently because that's what builds trust. When we truly listen, we echo back God's heart. He always hears our prayers, and we in turn can hear each other. The second way, we practice empathy. We don't just say, "Oh, that's rough," and move on. We allow ourselves to feel what the other person might be going through. This could be a friend buried under the weight of student loan debt, a neighbor mourning a loss, or a colleague stressed about deadlines. We imagine their struggle, we picture walking in their shoes, and when we do, we can't help but respond with kindness. The consequence of ignoring empathy is stark. We become emotionally numb, too focused on our own experiences to care about anyone else's. But empathy is a muscle we can strengthen through genuine curiosity. Ask questions. Learn about each other's stories. Validate the emotions involved. Offer a hug, a word of encouragement, or a moment of solidarity. Empathy doesn't fix every problem, but it reminds people they're not alone in their suffering. The third way we offer forgiveness. Family tensions often revolve around grudges that harden over time. Picture a parent who couldn't attend your school performances, or a sibling who said something hurtful in a heated moment. Without forgiveness, bitterness grows and families drift apart. Yet, when we recall God's unconditional grace, we find the strength to release resentment. The aftermath of refusing to forgive is a life spent looking backward, chained to anger. The solution is to remember that none of us is perfect. We all stumble, and we all crave mercy. So we choose to let go, to set others free from the prison of our judgment. When we do, we reflect a divine love that has set us free time and time again. The fourth way, we extend generosity. This might be financial help, but it could also be time, skills, or simply shared resources. In a community or business setting, generosity becomes the cornerstone of a thriving culture. Think of a small business owner who chooses to mentor a younger entrepreneur rather than see them as competition. Or a community leader who organizes food drives for families in need. When we hold on to our blessings too tightly, we deny others the chance to be uplifted. Generosity is a powerful tool because it speaks louder than our words. It says, "I care about your well-being." And when people feel cared for, they pass that care along to others. It's contagious, it builds momentum, and it reflects the open-handed nature of a God who never stops giving. The fifth way, we serve wholeheartedly. That means rolling up our sleeves, getting our hands dirty, and not waiting for someone else to step up first. In volunteer programs, churches, or neighborhood cleanups, real impact happens when we say, "I'm here to help. Tell me what you need." If we ignore this call to serve, we miss the joy of collaboration and the deep sense of fulfillment that comes from working side by side with others. We also leave gaps that could have been filled by our unique talents. The solution is clear. We recognize we are part of a body, each with different gifts. We use those gifts to ease burdens, bring comfort, and show people that compassion is alive and well. The sixth way, we speak with kindness. Words carry tremendous weight. They can heal or hurt, build or break. In the hustle of daily life, we can forget how easily a harsh comment can crush someone's spirit. In a family, a single sentence can spark a conflict that lingers for years. In a business setting, one sarcastic remark can demotivate an entire team. But when we choose our words carefully, when we decide to uplift, to compliment, to appreciate, we change the atmosphere. We create a space where people feel safe to share ideas and admit vulnerabilities. Words are free to give, but the impact is priceless. If we stay unaware of that, we lose moral credibility. But if we speak life into every conversation, we embody the compassion that Christ so freely gives. The seventh way, we encourage growth. That means we don't just comfort people where they are. We challenge them to become even better. For a young college graduate, encouragement can be the difference between playing small or daring to dream big. For a colleague on a new project, supportive words can spark creativity that benefits the whole organization. For a family member struggling with self-doubt, a single phrase like, "I believe in you," can turn their outlook around. Failing to encourage others results in a stagnant, uninspired environment. But by offering sincere praise, helpful feedback, or simply a gentle nudge forward, we ignite potential. We let others see they have something valuable to bring to the table and that God has equipped them for a greater purpose. And the eighth way, we remain humble and prayerful. None of these acts of compassion happen in isolation from our inner posture. When we stay grounded in prayer and humility, we acknowledge that any kindness we offer is simply a reflection of God working through us. Pride leads us to take credit for ourselves, and arrogance blinds us to other people's pain. But humility opens our eyes. It reminds us that we're in this together, and that it's God's love fueling every compassionate act. Regularly turning to prayer, whether in a quiet corner of our home, at the end of a busy workday, or in the car before a big meeting, we anchor ourselves in the source of true compassion. If we neglect this, we might still do good deeds, but they risk becoming hollow gestures aimed at boosting our own reputation. Prayer and humility keep our motives pure and our hearts in tune with God's will. Think about these 8 ways as seeds you plant in every relationship you have. With the young people you mentor, with your family members you hold dear, with the community you serve, and with the colleagues you see 5 days a week. If you fail to plant them, your field remains barren. But if you choose to cultivate them, you'll soon find a harvest of transformed hearts, restored hope, and deeper connection. You'll notice that your presence starts to change the atmosphere wherever you go, because you're no longer just you. You're a vessel for God's compassion, a reflection of His boundless love. So ask yourself, what could happen if each of us committed to these 8 ways? If we truly listened, practiced empathy, forgave, gave generously, served wholeheartedly, spoke kindly, encouraged growth, and stayed humble in prayer. I believe we'd see miracles, both subtle and grand. Relationships would heal, communities would thrive, and the ripple effect of compassion would extend far beyond anything we could measure. That's the power of living out God's love, day by day, conversation by conversation, act by act. And that's what brings us to the moment of truth. Will we each take responsibility for carrying these ways into our daily lives? Now, before we close, I want you to picture all those who might be touched by your decision. The teenagers who need a guiding hand, the family members longing for reconciliation, the colleagues craving an environment where kindness is the norm, the strangers in your community who simply need a moment of your time. You have the power to be the turning point in their story. You have the power to show them a glimpse of God's heart. And that, my friends, is not just a possibility, it's a calling. It's the mission set before each and every one of us who dares to believe that compassion can conquer apathy. These 8 ways aren't rules to check off. They are invitations to a deeper, more meaningful way of living. So let's move forward in faith with courage and humility. Let's leave no stone unturned, no opportunity wasted. Let's bring God's compassion into rooms that desperately need it, hearts that quietly yearn for it, and lives that might never be the same once they experience it. And now, let's reflect on what that means for us all. We've covered a lot, and it might feel overwhelming, but let me assure you, reflecting God's compassion is a journey, not a race. If you find yourself stumbling, remember God's grace is right there to pick you back up. If you feel you lack the strength, remember you're not meant to rely solely on your own power. If you doubt your worthiness to carry out these acts of compassion, recall that God calls unlikely people to do incredible things. What matters is your willingness, your openness, and your dedication to living a life that honors Him by loving others. I want to circle back to the heart of everything we've discussed. We started by acknowledging the human need for belonging, for empathy, for being seen. We recognize that God's compassion is the answer, and that we, as His children, are charged with making His love tangible. We explored 8 resourceful ways to do just that, from listening actively to praying humbly, from forgiving graciously to serving wholeheartedly. We looked at real-life scenarios, the young person with big questions, the family nursing old wounds, the community searching for unity, and the business environment longing for genuine respect. And with each of these ways, we saw the potential for powerful change. We also saw the cost of ignoring them. A world more divided, more isolated, and more devoid of hope. So how do we bring this all together? How do we hold on to the fire we feel in this moment and carry it back home, to work, to our daily routines? It starts with remembering these core truths. Compassion is not optional, it's essential. Compassion is not weak, it's transformative. Compassion is not passive, it's actionable. And compassion is not just a fuzzy feeling, it's a reflection of God's character in every interaction we have. When you leave here, you might be tempted to slip back into old patterns. The hustle of life will return. Deadlines will loom. Bills will need paying. People will still have disagreements. Pain, sorrow, and frustration will still exist. Yet, in the midst of all that, God's compassion still calls out. It beckons us to step up and be difference makers. So, I challenge you to set one clear intention before you go. Maybe it's choosing one person you plan to forgive. Maybe it's carving out time to volunteer. Maybe it's giving a genuine compliment to a coworker whose efforts often go unnoticed. Or maybe it's taking a young person aside and reminding them that their voice matters. In doing these small but meaningful acts, you'll start to see the ripple effect. Someone touched by your compassion will, in turn, offer compassion to another, and slowly will create pockets of hope in a world that sometimes feels overshadowed by cynicism. If you want to see God's love in action, be that action. If you want to see a culture shift in your family, job, or community, commit to being the first one to shift. It won't always be easy, but it will always be worth it. We often overlook the fact that the simplest gestures can carry the most profound impact. A warm meal offered to a neighbor going through a tough time. A note of encouragement slipped under a friend's door. An honest word of appreciation for your spouse or child. These moments can revive a hope that's on the brink of collapse. They can help someone realize that maybe, just maybe, they aren't so alone after all. We don't need to perform grandiose acts of charity to reflect God's compassion. Although large acts are wonderful too. What matters is consistency, sincerity, and the heartfelt desire to see someone else flourish. Let me ask you another question. Will you be the one to carry the torch of compassion into a darkened room? Or will you wait for someone else, convincing yourself that it's not your job, that someone more qualified or less busy or more spiritual should do it? Listen closely. God's compassion is meant to be lived out by all of us, not just by a select few. Each of us has a unique sphere of influence. Friends, relatives, co-workers, neighbors, people who might never cross paths with anyone else in this room. That means the responsibility rests on your shoulders and mine. The time for waiting is over. The time for acting is now. And in these moments of action, Never forget where your strength truly comes from. Pride will tell you, you did that on your own. But humility reminds you, God is working through me. Pride will tempt you to shine the spotlight on yourself. Humility invites you to turn that spotlight back toward the greater good, back toward the one who is the source of all love. This is why prayer remains so crucial. It's our link to divine guidance, our means of recalibrating our hearts when they start leaning towards self-centeredness. Through prayer, we stay connected, reminded that we can do nothing apart from God's enabling grace. Also, let's not discount the power of community in sustaining our commitment. Surround yourself with people who share your vision for compassion. Encourage one another, hold each other accountable, celebrate small victories, and learn from setbacks together. There is strength in numbers, and when a group of determined individuals decides to live out God's compassion, nothing can halt their combined impact. Seek out groups in your church, your workplace, your neighborhood. Start a regular meeting or even an online chat group where you share stories, ideas, and prayer requests. This keeps the flame of compassion alive when life's storms threaten to snuff it out. By now you might feel stirred. That's good. Let that stirring push you to action. Don't let it fade away like a fleeting spark. Harness that energy, that conviction, and translate it into concrete steps. Each day ask yourself, how can I reflect God's compassion right here, right now? Maybe it's a simple text message to a friend you haven't spoken to in months. Maybe it's listening to your child's story about their day without rushing them. Maybe it's being the first to apologize in a conflict at work or at home. Whatever form it takes, seize that opportunity. Let your heart lead and trust that God will multiply your efforts in ways you might never fully see. At the core of all this is love, God's love, which He's poured out for us and calls us to share with one another. We're not conjuring compassion from thin air. We're channeling a divine compassion that's already been offered freely to us. When you reflect on your own life, moments when grace carried you, times when forgiveness set you free, seasons where generosity opened doors, let that gratitude fuel your desire to do the same for others. It's the cycle of blessing, the unbroken chain of love that God wants us to continue on this earth. So as we conclude, I want you to hold on to these final words. You matter. Your actions matter. Your willingness to reflect God's compassion can be the pivot that turns someone's despair into hope, someone's loneliness into belonging, someone's confusion into clarity. Never underestimate the significance of the everyday ways you can show kindness. Embrace the 8 resourceful ways we've explored. Let them guide your decisions, shape your habits, and mark your legacy. We have a choice right here and right now to make compassion a lifestyle, a choice that aligns with God's calling and transforms the world around us. One person, one gesture, one prayer at a time. I challenge you to be bold, to be fearless in offering love, even where it's not returned, to be steady in your commitment to empathy, even when it's inconvenient, and to be unwavering in your pursuit of unity, even when tension threatens to pull everyone apart. Remember, none of us can do everything, but each of us can do something, and together our combined somethings will paint a beautiful tapestry of hope, each thread woven with divine compassion. Let this be your rallying cry. I will listen actively. I will practice empathy. I will forgive freely. I will give generously. I will serve wholeheartedly. I will speak kindly. I will encourage growth. I will remain humble in prayer. Say it to yourself each morning. Write it on your heart. And watch as God uses you, yes you, to bring His compassion to life in places that once seemed barren of hope. Watch how people respond when they feel genuinely cared for. Watch how relationships blossom when grudges are laid down. Watch how communities become safer, kinder, and more vibrant. And watch how your own heart will expand in ways you never thought possible. This is our moment, our invitation, our promise to the world and to ourselves, a promise that we will not stand idly by while hearts break and hope fades. We will reflect God's compassion, and in doing so, we will rekindle a faith in humanity that our world so desperately needs. My friends, thank you for sharing this space, for opening your hearts, and for daring to believe that love still conquers all. Now go out there and let that love shine. Go out there and be the vessel through which God's compassion flows. Go out there and make the difference you were born to make. You have everything you need, and the world is waiting. Let's answer that call. Let's be the reflection of God's compassion every single day. I believe in you. More importantly, God believes in you. Now go. Love boldly. Give freely. Serve joyfully, and watch the world change one act of compassion at a time.